Radio the Universe is a top-down indie action urban exploration game developed by 6E, which, for those who know their hex code, is gray. Right off the bat, the first thing that Radio the Universe reminded me of was Hyper Light Drifter, with its bit-crushed retro pixel stylings, ruined, technologically advanced world, top-down combo-heavy combat, and impressionistic storytelling style. Though, looking beyond that, Radio the Universe does a lot to differentiate itself from Heart Machine's masterpiece. You play as an immortal wanderer, according to the Steam page, who travels through a maze of a city that is in a state of decay. On a surface level, Radio the Universe's color palette is much more washed out, and while Hyper Light Drifters seem to take place within a more rural, technology has corrupted this natural world kind of setting, Radio the Universe is firmly planted in its urban cityscape. Movement is slower paced as well. You won't be drifting through these environments. Instead, you'll be looking for ways around obstacles and using the handy jump arc feature to cross gaps and find your way to different elevations within the environment. You can sort of dash around with the jump, and it's also used to evade attacks, but more on that later. A lot of the beginning is balanced between combat encounters and exploration, with neither seeming to take too much precedence over the other once you get past the first few rooms. Speaking of combat, though, you have what looks to be a sword, a huge sword, as your initial weapon, which can do a normal attack and a heavy attack after charging it for a few seconds. You'll also gain access to range weapons and special attacks. These two forms of damage have cooldowns, so you can't just spam them, which is good, because the ones I tried in the demo were pretty useful and powerful, so the cooldown mechanic is a nice balancing feature. New weapons are found in the environment, while special moves can be unlocked through the game's upgrade feature by using different terminals that look like phone booths and spending experience that you gain from defeating enemies. You can also find experience by destroying special boxes loaded with it while exploring. Now, you may think that gaining experience is as simple as just defeating enemies, but this is where Radio the Universe starts to get pretty strategic. Enemies have their health displayed above them during encounters, and your attacks do varying amounts of damage. The goal here, like pretty much every game, is to reduce your enemy's HP to 0. However, in Radio the Universe, if you reduce their HP beyond 0 by performing an overkill, you get no experience. So you need to calculate your attacks so that enemy HP is reduced to exactly 0 to ensure that you get experience for the kill. This is a pretty unique system, and takes a bit of time to wrap your mind around and get used to, but it keeps players from just mindlessly spamming attacks. Sure, you can clear rooms that way, but you won't be able to upgrade your health or gain new abilities, because you won't be collecting enough experience to do so. I think it's a really cool system. It causes you to think on your toes, especially during tough encounters where you're trying to evade attacks and get in hits that will ensure an enemy gets down right to 0 at the end of it all. Your player character is also pretty fragile. Before you start upgrading your health, you won't even be able to take a hit from an enemy before dying. And even after some upgrades, death can happen pretty quickly. Enemies like to attack in groups, and the bigger enemies can hit like a truck. Baddies usually come in the form of mech, from tiny little spider dudes to bigger, badder robotic creatures who just want to stomp the shit out of you. Fucking siren. It takes a bit of practice to get into the rhythm of the combat, but once you gain a few upgrades and access to a ranged weapon, things get a lot smoother. One of the selling points the developer mentions on the Steam page is that you can make combat as simple or as complex as you want through the various upgrades and the use of different moves and weapons, and all of that is true. For the most part, I stuck to a pretty simplistic moveset of melee and ranged, with a few special moves peppered in for stronger foes. But you have a weapon loadout and can swap between different weapons, so I can see some players using a more complex playstyle to really maximize combat. It's really well put together in that sense. So yeah, I've talked a lot about the combat, but the exploration is also just as important in Radio the Universe. The city itself is a maze with a hub area that you'll often loop back to. There are some light exploration and combat puzzles that unlock new paths, and it seems already that there will be a lot of secrets to find. The world also has a foreboding, lonely kind of feel to it, a tension that's palpable even while just exploring within safe rooms. This feeling could have possibly been exacerbated by one of the early parts of the demo where you're chased through several hallways by a giant wall of instant death static. But yeah, I don't know. I could never shake that feeling that something sinister could be waiting in the next room, or even in the same room. I think the music and sound design adds a lot to that as well. There's a lot of echo happening, especially in underground sections, which is fitting. And some of the tracks sound rather foreboding, almost as if they'd fit perfectly well in a survival horror game. Even during fights, things don't ramp up into some techno-heavy beat as you might expect, but stay pretty ambient, mostly taking a darker turn during those moments, then returning to the decaying, echoey tone of the regular tracks. The main hub of the game doesn't escape this either. Sure, it's a bit more subdued, but there's still some odd dissonance here and there, which lends the whole thing more of a horror edge. I like it. Still, overall, I'd say the game has a vibe that feels more isolated and a bit sad, as if something was lost in this ruined place. This is expounded upon in the brief story sequences that you'll run across. They're abstract and difficult to decipher, but I prefer this kind of ambiguous storytelling, so I'm on board. You'll also find these transmissions, I guess you'd call them, that relay some character dialogue, and I'm not really sure what relation it has to anything else, but it will be really interesting to see how it all pieces together in the final game. Overall, I think Radio the Universe is a really cool and unique take on the indie top-down action genre. It's got enough going for it, both in its style and presentation, as well as in the strategic elements of its combat, that it definitely stands out from the pack. So, Radio the Universe. Check it out. Dungeon Chill. Out.